BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody, welcome to the show. First, I need to say that today is Thursday when this episode is coming out, but to all the daily listeners, there will be a regularly scheduled Anything Goes segment on Friday of this week. It's just, I wanted to do an update on some of the material regarding the 1981 murder of Joan Webster. I did some episodes on this one in the previous months, and I had the opportunity to get in touch with Eve Carson, who's the author of the book Mommy's a Mole, about the murder of Joan Webster. Eve Carson is the sister-in-law of Joan. Joan Webster disappeared after leaving Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts, and for 9 years, the majority of the world had no idea what happened to Joan. But the story goes that a woman was out walking her dog in 1990, as we said, around just under 10 years after Joan's disappearance, and she saw something in the woods that she didn't recognize. So once she approached it, she found that it was a human skull, and it turned out to be the remains of Joan Webster. So the reason why a lot of people learn about the murder of Joan Webster is because of a theory that is connected to the Zodiac Killer. Was Joan murdered by the Zodiac Killer? And as you heard everything right, Boston, Massachusetts, what really is the connection? I mean, to people who follow the Zodiac episodes and longtime PBOR listeners will know straight up about Michael O'Hare, Gareth Penn, and this theory about mathematical signatures and that the Zodiac's going in between Boston and Berkeley, California. I would like to read the first message that Eve Carson has written me here, and let's just have a listen. I listened to your program about Joan's case. I understand many people are aware of her case because of Gareth Penn's assertions. Her murder was part of the Zodiac crimes. Some are still convinced that this is the case. There is nothing in source documents to support any connection. Joan's case was heavily publicized and sensational for me. The key to resolving it was to look at the investigation itself. Too many things did not make sense. I've been recovering documents for many years now through a private investigator and FOIAs. It's a slow process. Documents were fragmented, not all in one repository, and there has been a strong resistance. I have now recovered thousands of pages of records. What became very evident was the fact that there was a corrupted investigation, a cover-up. Authorities ignored exculpatory evidence in their possession. Current custodians are perpetuating an egregious injustice. It is still being covered up to this day. Gareth Penn's insertion of the Zodiac theory only compounded the confusion in Joan's case. It's not so baffling anymore. I don't know if you do programs that are unrelated to the Zodiac, but I would be interested in getting Joan's case some more exposure. And I'd have to take a very hard stance with this one. First, yes, there will be loads of material on Friday about things that are unrelated to the Zodiac, but in regards to Joan Webster, I do have to take a very hard stance. I do not believe that there was any connection with Joan Webster and Michael O'Hare, especially Michael O'Hare as a Zodiac Killer suspect. I don't believe he was the Zodiac Killer. I don't believe that Michael O'Hare murdered anybody. As far as Gareth Penn's theory, well, I'm not really quite sure what to make of Gareth Penn because I don't exactly know what position to put him in. Is he someone who is good but misunderstood, or is he somebody who is evil and is just like a pure sociopath who is deceiving us all? I'm not quite sure. I also do not believe that there is any evidence to suggest that Gareth Penn murdered Joan Webster, except for one thing that we will say we'll say later on. I was talking to Joe, who runs the Zodiac Killer Insights series, who thinks that Gareth Penn was the Zodiac killer, and he described Eve Carson's theory as being very simple. She believes in a police cover-up, that the police had some inside knowledge that they didn't share with the general public. They used their authoritative power to hide the situation and to be very deceptive to the general public. I would actually like to go to the next message that has been written to me once again by Eve Carson. The number of discrepancies with the story authorities promoted and source documents is staggering. There are 3 critical areas pointing to a cover-up. I have following documents to support this. Number 1, authorities claimed that they learned about an individual named Leonard Paradiso after receiving an anonymous letter from a snitch named Robert Bond on January 5, 1983. This is false. Leonard Paradiso was an alleged serial killer who was targeted by a woman named Patty Bono on January 19, 1982. Patty Bono had a connection with a Massachusetts State Police officer named Carmen Tamaro. That's an important name in the Joan Webster mystery. Tamaro suggested that Paradiso had a boat and that he, on August 1st, 1982, he came forward with the theory that Leonard Paradiso had murdered Joan Webster and dumped her body in the water. He then coached Bond in an interview with Massachusetts State Police on January 14, 1983. The letter Bond wrote implicating Paradiso was mailed on January 10, 1983, and not received until after the Massachusetts State Police interview with Bond. The letter came after meeting at least twice with Tamaro. So, this guy, Leonard Paradiso, becomes very important in the Joan Webster mystery because there's even a book out that you can get on Amazon.com called The Paradiso Files, looking at how Leonard Paradiso could be the unknown serial killer of Massachusetts who went under the radar. Eve Carson seems to think that he was more or less being used as a patsy, although that's my phraseology, not hers. And in short, that people fabricated a case against him, but I hope that that part was clear. They put forward this theory that Leonard Paradiso abducted Joan Webster from Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts, 1981, murdered her, and then dumped her body somewhere in the water off of this boat. Let's move on to point number 2 in Eve Carson's list of discrepancies. Leonard Paradiso sunk his boat in July of 1981 because it had a broken rudder. I have certified court records affirming the boat did not exist when Joan disappeared. Once again, Joan disappeared in the late fall of 1981, saying that Leonard Paradiso's boat was at the bottom of some body of water, and that's what she means by saying did not exist. It had sunk already. Authorities had no crime scene, but they continued to control the information and continued to promote a false narrative. Former ADA Tim Burke wrote an account that is not factual in 2008, and you've been seeing one thing about it in the graphics here. Burke was in contact with the prosecutor handling the federal case surrounding the boat and provided fabricated evidence. The current custodian of Joan's case did not even have the records involving the boat. Joan's remains resurfaced on April 18, 1990, more than 30 miles from the alleged crime at Pier 7. I think that we need to say that no matter what you think about this case, whatever theory they put forward about the boat was not only wrong, it was badly wrong. I mean, Eve says she's gone back and discovered that Leonard Paradiso didn't even own the boat at the time, or that the boat had sunk. As she put it did not exist. But more importantly, not only was Joan Webster not dumped into the water, her remains were found on land. As we said, the woman's out walking her dog and she found Joan Webster's skull, but 30 miles away from where they believe that it happened. Found inland, she wasn't dumped in the water. Everything about the theory was wrong. Whether you choose to accept certain angles of this theory or not, of Eve Carson's cover-up theory, that is, I mean, the investigators and the authorities really, really presented some incorrect information in their theorizing. Eve Carson's point number 3. Authorities represented that Joan vanished without being seen. That is false. I recovered the composite first, but about a year ago I recovered the police report of the eyewitness's description taken in December of 1981. The lead and the composite were suppressed. The description of Joan is spot on. The description of the man with Joan was not Leonard Paradiso, as authorities continue to claim. The eyewitness description reveals a lot about the man who maneuvered Joan to a different car. He was a middle-aged white man. He was under 6 feet tall and approximately 160 pounds. He had a heavy suitcase and was possibly traveling. Joan had already engaged a town taxi to take her to Cambridge. Her suitcase was already loaded in the trunk. She announced the man was with her. She had traveled alone on the flight, and the man exchanged words with the cabbie and announced, "We don't want to take this cab." Joan would not have changed vehicles with someone she did not know. Tomorrow and his subordinate at Logan, Andrew Palumbo, another very important name in this case, would have a knowledge of the interviews that were conducted at Logan, and this report, George Webster, also had this lead but ignored it. That's the relative of Joan Webster. Tomorrow and Palumbo were integral in Joan's investigation. The long story short is Eve Carson is going to say that this cover-up is going to be centered on these two individuals, Carmen Tomorrow and Andrew Palumbo, that it's more or less a direct accusation that they were the ones who intentionally covered up pieces of Joan's information. Tomorrow and Palumbo both knew that Paradiso was an easy target. The current custodian of Joan's files informed Eve that Tim Burke did not want to focus on him. Their files were grossly deficient in relevant records. Eve Carson was instructed not to probe deeply. Authorities dismissed the Zodiac connection. Penn communicated with the Websters for at least a year. I was surprised about the things they shared with Penn. It really revealed that the Websters played him. The FBI found Penn's theory to be forced and not valid. And absolutely, Garrett Penn's theory about Michael O'Hare murdering Joan Webster is forced. If you want to hear why, you can hear a 6-part book discussion on Gareth Penn's Times 17 here on this channel, Black Box Online Radio. It's a 7-part playlist. The final one is our episode, Michael O'Hare and the Murder of Joan Webster, where we go into more detail. But absolutely, it's forced, and you can hear all the reasons why. And that is talking about Michael O'Hare as the murderer of Joan Webster. With Gareth Penn, he's in somewhat of a different category, because you hear about how he is communicating with the Websters and all this time, and I'm still not sure if he's a good person or an evil, sinister person. And let's keep going, though, with Eve's writing. Not many people know that Joan had planned to have a guest in New Jersey over the Thanksgiving break. The plans changed and she flew back Saturday night. I know this individual, and I know that he was not the man at Logan. The night I learned that Joan was missing, I asked for the guy's number. Looking back, I wonder if this was an initial attempt to pin Joan's murder on him. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this update was a lot of people have been putting in things in the comment section about how they thought that Joan Webster's murder was connected to her parents' involvement with the CIA. You can even see the title of Eve Carson's book, Mommy's a Mole. And I really wanted to know, was that really true, first of all? Or maybe Eve Carson would provide an alternative, or just would she share anything about that? And this whole thing that Joan Webster was murdered so the CIA could send a message to her parents. Maybe they had done something that the CIA didn't approve of. Or perhaps, as she just said, there could have been this other individual that was meant to take the fall for Joan's murder, but it ended up being attributed to the Zodiac killer. Although Joan disappeared in 1981, and Gareth Penn's book came out in, 1987, and then her remains were found in 1990. They definitely went with the Paradiso angle first, but his boat had already been in the water, so says Eve Carson here. Now, I would like to go to Eve's next message. Authorities publicly claimed Leonard Paradiso was driving a gypsy cab and picked up Joan at Logan alone. They knew this was not true. She knocked on the window of a town taxi driven by Fenton Allen Moore. He gave the description of the man with Joan. The man with Joan maneuvered her to a blue car in the cab. Moore could not identify it as a known taxi. The police had this in their report. There had to be at least one other person, the individual driving the blue car. And I need to really give a lot of credit to Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insights series, because he was really on top of this, because I mean, even just from his own investigation, he was like, it seems like there has to be another person in that car for if things happen the way that these reports are coming out. I mean, his instincts even just directed him to that. That just as Eve Carson has written here, there has to be at least another person, the individual driving the blue car. To me, this suggests that this was premeditated, especially with other known facts. Joan was the target. More than two people would be sheer speculation. Nothing in recovered documents suggests more than the man with Joan and the driver. So that's just two people, though. Like, not one person, not some guy saying, hey, I can give you a ride into town. And Eve knew Joan personally. So, saying that she must have had some familiarity with the person who got her into the car, but who was that man? We still do not know. Criminals work in familiar areas. Andrew Palumbo matches up with known locations in Joan's case. He does not fit the description of the man with Joan, but he could have been the individual driving the blue car. See, now this is a very, very direct accusation. He could get a vehicle in the cab line. He aggressively had tried to pin a lot of crimes on Paradiso, not only Joan's murder. It makes sense with his superior tomorrow would have had his back and come up with the Paradiso boat story. Now, the important thing to note there is this guy, Andrew Palumbo, he is accused of driving the car, not being the person that lured Joan Webster to it. So, does that mean that he murdered Joan Webster? I think we should just leave it just as Eve Carson has written it here. She accuses him of being the driver of that car, and then, are you seeing where this cover-up is going? That the police have this, way of getting out of trouble where they have this story that they're just going to tell, they're just going to blame it on this serial killer, alleged serial killer, and he's going to be their patsy, their stooge, or the person that's going to take the fall for their wrongdoings, their crimes, their indiscretions, and all of the above. Is that really what happened? I just want to put Eve's theory on the table, and I would love for someone to respond to that in the comments section there. Now, I think that we need to go to Eve's next message that she has written for me here. Joan would not have changed cars with a stranger. The eyewitness description states that Joan told the town taxi cabbie a man was with her. After exchanging words with the cabbie, the man with Joan told her, "We don't want and we shouldn't take this cab." She knew this person. Well, does that rule out Gareth Penn as the murderer? I mean, this is just Eve's interpretation of this, but I don't know how you would establish a pre-1981 connection between Gareth Penn and Joan Webster. The only thing I can say is Gareth Penn has some very strong similarities to the resemblance of this person. Even seeing the composite going around. Joe from Zodiac Killer Insights has said that he just can't connect Gareth Penn to the crime scene, and he definitely resembles the guy. I think he resembles that composite, but did he actually do this? I'm uncertain. I mean, I think that person looks exactly like Gareth Penn, except with Gareth Penn in a wig. Gareth Penn had straight hair. This person has curly hair, but very, very strong facial similarities. But where's the familiarity? Why is Joan Webster going with this guy in a cab? She would have headed back to her dorm. It was late, after 10:30. She had money for a cab. She may not have known the driver, but probably didn't pay much attention when she had changed cars. I mean, that really does sound like somebody who had some ounce of familiarity with her. One other observation about Tomorrow and Palumbo. There are many incorrect points in the letter. An interview with the snitch Robert Bond. Tim Burke had these documents sealed in another improperly entangled case. The current custodian did not have these records. Just evidence the documents existed. I obtained through a private investigator. I obtained them through a private investigator. They were verified by another PI who was involved in the case at the time. Bond's allegations are discredited. He was getting information from Tomorrow and Palumbo. During an MSP interview, Bond was offered a multiple choice for Joan's manner of death and had been told by the officers which one to choose. The letter that came gave the correct manner of her death with correct detail more than 7 years before Joan surfaced. Tomorrow and Palumbo knew the correct manner of her death. So, I think that's a pretty solid accusation. But what I wanted to do was I wrote back to Eve Carson, and you've heard her theory. You've heard about the cover-up. You've heard about Carmen Tomorrow. You've heard about Andrew Palumbo. What I wanted to know was, is there a CIA motive going on in this? And I was like, do you believe that Joan Webster was murdered because of her parents' involvement with the CIA, whether it's to send a message to her parents or that Joan Webster had compromised some type of CIA activity? And I was like, I want a very clear answer, like what really is going on with this? And Eve Carson's response about that is, "Hi, Ned. I believe the CIA background of the Websters is a factor, but not in the way you might think. Any murder investigation should look at people close to the victim. That was never done with the Websters. Source documents show their hand in the investigation. At first glance, they seem perfectly reasonable for parents to be involved, but their involvement goes beyond what anyone would expect. I do not believe an outside offender would have a vendetta against the Websters and have murdered Joan." I mean, outside offender is a very broad term. I mean, is that also including something like the CIA? It does make sense. Oh, it does not make sense, excuse me. The family was well connected and had resources to have the very best on the case. Where I think their background is important is in the mindset of intelligence-trained parents. Once again, look at the title of Eve Carson's book, Mommy's the Mole. CIA training is in methods and skills to gather information and evidence. Some documents confirm they did have evidence, exculpatory evidence favoring Paradiso's innocence. The family is very secretive, something I had to learn digging into Joan's case. In doing this research, I learned a lot of things that the family told me were not true about Joan and other matters. The family is patriarchal and very image conscious. They were skilled at creating perceptions and controlling information. The family clearly did not want people to know what really happened to Joan. That's a problem. However, it does not explain why they had to aggressively pursue a scapegoat. Well, I mean, I think Eve has put forward a very big reason about why they would want to aggressively pursue a scapegoat because of this angle with the police cover-up, and that one of the officers involved with the cover-up could have even been the driver. I was prepared. I was not prepared for this. The family is very emotionally disconnected. The two officers George worked with closely knew the manner of Joan's death more than 7 years before Joan's remains resurfaced. Andrew Palumbo and Carmen Tomorrow. ADA Tim Burke became involved in 1982. He is complicit after the fact, bringing false witnesses, fabricated evidence, and lying to courts and federal authorities. Exculpatory evidence was hidden by Tim Burke, Andrew Palumbo, Carmen Tomorrow, and George Webster. Intent is very clear: diverting a legitimate investigation. The Websters were very influential at promoting a false story. Authorities past and present are equally disingenuous. They are shielding malfeasance. Joan's murder has to do with Webster family secrets. That is obvious. And with the position they took, and the things I learned later, I don't necessarily think their CIA involvements had to do with it. But it was aggravated by the CIA mentality. I hope this answers your question. Signed, Eve. Absolutely, I think that answered my question. Was Joan Webster murdered because of her parents' involvement with the CIA? I think she said very clearly, no, it was instead, the parents had some involvement in some way, but the CIA mentality of being just emotionally disconnected from their family, or that some dark secret that was going on with the Webster family may have prompted Joan's death, but it doesn't mean that some CIA assassin had her taken out to get revenge on the Websters, like a lot of people were saying on the internet, or even something in a lighter way that they were sending a message that the Webster family knew too much and they needed to keep quiet, or that Joan had some way somehow obtained some type of CIA info that she shouldn't have. I think Eva has responded to that rather well, saying that yes, the Websters did have dark secrets. Perhaps the CIA didn't have her murdered, but some way, somehow, these dark secrets came back to affect them. And the last thing I would like to do is that I would like to share some things. I asked Eve Carson if there was anything that she wanted to promote because she has written the majority of the dialogue that you've heard in this episode, and she says that, of course, her book Mommy's a Mole, as well as an article that she has written for Unsolved Magazine, Joan Webster, Justice Denied, and that will be available here. You can find the link. And now, what she says about the article is, the article did not go into tangents like the Zodiac. I had limited space and it focuses on what happened, what the state promoted, and what was learned in recovering documents. The only thing that is preventing Joan's case from being unsolved is the state of Massachusetts, corrupt authorities, past and present. If you want to learn more, I maintain a thread on Joan's case at Web Sleuths, and that's another thing you can promote. There are not too many current posts, and there are not too many posts, but these are the most current and up-to-date sources about her case. I repeat, these are the most current and up-to-date sources about her case, and the websleuths.com page on Joan Webster. And once again, Eve's book is called Mommy's a Mole by Eve Carson. Now, at this time, I would just like to ask you guys, what do you think about all of this? What do you think about the Zodiac angle? Eve Carson dismisses it wholeheartedly. You can share that in the comment section below here on this channel. And she just simply says it's a distraction. She wasn't murdered by the Zodiac killer. I think I have to agree with her. What do you think about the police cover-up angle, and that Eve Carson is perhaps insinuating that Joan Webster was in somewhat of a vulnerable place because of the actions of her parents, and that these two police officers maybe conspired and did something very destructive to Joan, and that they blamed it on this serial killer, Leonard Paradiso, and that's the end of it. They tried to with this boat theory, but they didn't count on Joan Webster's remains being discovered. What do you have to say about any of this? Please drop your ideas in the comments section below, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Anything Goes segment here on this channel. And anybody can write the show just as Eve did at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. I'll see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.